You're tuned in to the only all-sports talk network in the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Check out the Israel Sports Radio store by clicking on the store tab on IsraelSportsRadio.com. Great items such as t-shirts, hats, books, and much, much more. Price does include shipping, and we do ship throughout the entire world. All major credit cards are accepted to make your shopping experience easy and convenient. So once again, click on the store tab on www.israelsportsradio.com.
Broadcasting live from Israel,
IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Folks, as you may or may not know, Israel Sports Radio is not supported by government funding or personal donations or solicitations. Rather, it is supported by people just like you by purchasing gifts at the Israel Sports Radio store. Your purchase of a t-shirt, a hat, or book helps us continue our great, fabulous programming, such as bringing the Maccabi Baseball 2013 or the Israel Football League in the last few years. We hope to continue broadcasting for you fine folks out there throughout the entire world who listen to the station. And the way we are able to do so is through purchases through our Israel Sports Radio store. So once again, click on the store tab on www.israelsportsradio.com.
broadcasting live from Jerusalem, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Check out the Israel Sports Radio store by clicking on the store tab on IsraelSportsRadio.com. Great items such as t-shirts, hats, books, and much, much more. Price does include shipping, and we do ship throughout the entire world. All major credit cards are accepted to make your shopping experience easy and convenient. So once again, click on the store tab on www.israelsportsradio.com.
Building love of Israel, one sports fan at a time. IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Folks, as you may or may not know, Israel Sports Radio is not supported by government funding or personal donations or solicitations. Rather, it is supported by people just like you by purchasing gifts at the Israel Sports Radio store. Your purchase of a t-shirt, a hat, or book helps us continue our great, fabulous programming, such as bringing the Maccabi Baseball 2013 or the Israel Football League in the last few years. We hope to continue broadcasting for you fine folks out there throughout the entire world who listen to the station. And the way we are able to do so is through purchases through our Israel Sports Radio store. So once again, click on the store tab on www.israelsportsradio.com.
You're tuned in to the only all-sports talk network in the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Yes, on the line right now to tell us more about high school football and the NFL in general, our good friend Big Benjamin Bloch. Big Ben, how you doing out there?
I'm doing all right, Ari. How you doing?
Doing great. Let's talk high school first. You're a very big high school fan. You're a high school star, obviously, in Mercer Island. Tell us what is new in the game of high school football.
You know, I got a lot of ethical issues to cover.
Okay.
A lot of issues regarding recruiting, a lot of issues regarding hitting. There's been a flurry of lawsuits and legislation in situations where kids have hurt themselves from hitting with their head down. In one case, high school, I believe in Illinois, and the helmet company, Riddle, was actually forced to pay out $11.5 million to a kid who died during an Oklahoma drill. And that's a drill that, you know, he did, not just in high school, you do it at every level. And I think that it's a big issue. You know, coaches always told us, you know, not to do that, not to play with your head down, not to do any of that. But, you know, I mean, it's just something that happens. It says on the back of the helmet. At the same time, that's a big issue because when you're playing, you're not always thinking about it, especially for kids.
Now, were you worried as a high school star about any of those type of things, injuries with your neck, regarding the helmets, anything like that?
I mean, I've seen it happen. It's not always pretty, but I gotta, you just kind of go through it. You don't let it get to you. You don't let it bother you. If it happens to a teammate, you gotta help them out. But at the same time, when you step into the locker room as a freshman, those coaches point to the back of the helmet. And there is an illustration on the back of the helmet that says, do not hit like this, never hit with your head down. And it's an incumbent issue upon coaches. I don't know how much of it can really be legislated. There have been attempts to legislate in multiple states regarding how much full contact you can have in practices, how many times you can have full padded practices. In states like Louisiana, you can do it year-round. Most states, you can't do that. In some cases, they've cut it down to 4 practices a week. In some cases, it's almost become like only for 30 minutes for practice, which is, well, that's just ridiculous, but it's too much. At the same time, and it's all been something that was kind of a byproduct of the Junior Seau incident. A little over a year ago, where he committed suicide, and this has always happened. And then you have other issues, steroid use. I think you and I were talking about my synagogue's president, who grew up in a upper middle class white Houston suburb, where one of the kids on the team's dad was a doctor, and he prescribed the entire team steroids. And this, a team full of rich white kids, a team that had no business competing, all of a sudden won a state title. And you had to steer clear of them in the hall and all that, but, that should raise an issue. And in states like Texas and across the South, where people are really, really into it to like a disproportionate and unhealthy level. Maybe not unhealthy, but something that you and I, being from the West Coast, would be like, you're a little too into it, the kids. But that happens there. When I was in high school, there was a thing called Yellow Jackets, and I had teammates that took it, and that stuff killed a couple of kids across the nation when I was playing high school ball. I never took it. But, there were a lot of guys that really wanted that extra level. A lot of kids jacked up on creatine. I had a teammate that was actually dumped by his girlfriend because apparently the creatine had some unusual side effects.
Yes, we know, right. We know what those are. Now, you were never tempted to take any types of performance-enhancing drugs?
Not really, no. I mean, there were guys that would take like 8 ibuprofens or whatever before a game. You had a few people that wanted to take Adderall, and I still don't see how that's performance enhancing. Perhaps it's because as an ADD kid I was prescribed to it, and I can tell you being on that stuff and playing football does not help. If you want to feel like you're having a heart attack in the huddle, hey, then it'll help you. But does it help you play? No.
All right, but just real quick, we're going to Adderall. Now, after these games or at the beginning of the season, after the season, were you ever tested in high school? And if so, did you come up positive because you took Adderall? Tell us about the testing in high school.
To my knowledge, there is no testing. Not for Adderall, not for anything like that.
Okay.
Everything is state to state, district to district when it comes to high school. But if you're prescribed to it at any level, and these days it's very common, probably maybe a few years back before you and I were in high school, for kids to be sent by their parents to the doctor prescribes them Ritalin, Adderall, whatever, jacks up their academic performance. So it would be very hard to gauge for high school kids. I think the end result is it's got to be on coaches, just like you got to teach a kid how to hit right. You got to teach them how to take care of their bodies right. And when I went to my old high school's practice, after coming back from Israel, I went back and I watched one of their practices. This was something well beyond the scope of, what high school practice was like when I was in high school. There was a ton more staff, a ton more equipment. You had strength coaches that weren't like regular football coaches. There was just so much more to it. And, they kind of spoiled them because they were playing on a synthetic field turf. We had to go on the mud back in the day.
Right on there.
There's so much more to it. And then you got other issues. You got a slew of recruiting issues. I read a story from a few years back where a booster from the University of Memphis paid this one defensive tackle's high school coach $150,000 to sway him from going to an SEC school to going to play for Memphis. And that's absolutely obscene. You have a whole slew of demands for verbal commitments by players. Around here, you have a lot of players that will verbally commit to one Pac-10 school and then switch. And that's put a lot of pressure on kids that are sophomores, juniors, even freshmen. In some cases, you have heard of the bigger schools going and watching Pop Warner. And it's really hard because you're talking about kids, I had a shot at coaching high school kids once in the Israel High School Football League.
Right.
And I think too often a lot of these guys wear is football. Forget that these are kids.
That's for sure. And speaking of kids, talk about the pressure these kids face playing high school football. Again, you were a star at Mercer Island in Washington, and it's not the same as it's not the same. Well, just real quick, it's not the same as Texas, maybe, or Florida, California. But what was the pressure like for you playing at a high level in high school?
I mean, I think there's more of it from peers. I played at the UW camp, and there's, I think just the pressure to compete is one thing, the pressure to go out and win, but you're playing for your teammates. For some kids, they're playing for scholarships. I think that for kids from poor backgrounds and from poorer schools, I think there's a little more pressure on them, especially in regard to recruiting, because that's their only shot. I was very fortunate to go to a good school, live in a decent area, and I would have gone to college one way or other with or without football. But for a lot of kids, that's the only way they're getting to college. That's the only way they're getting to the next level of life. And in some cases, that results in some extremely weird things. One of the powerhouse programs around here at Bellevue High School has been known to go into the hood and move some players out, move some players around. Some kids who would be playing at, I guess you could call them the ghetto school, that's what they are, somehow get moved out to a well-to-do suburb. And that's happened at least one other school in the area, because I can tell you right now, I played against Bellevue, I played against another one, Skyline, for 4 years of high school. And I look at what they got now, and it's like those kids, you didn't find them in Bellevue.
So how would that work? They move the line, or they get these kids houses in the borderline certain the school districts?
They give them either they give them an address, a local address in the district, or in some cases they outright move them. A lot of these kids are from single parent households. You get them an apartment in the area, help them out, and in the case of, let's take the coach of Bellevue for a second, Butch Gottschalk. I'll give you an example because I played when he was just starting out. I was on the last Mercer Island team to beat Bellevue. He makes about $100,000 a year. Your high school coach is supposed to be a teacher. Well, this dude doesn't teach, supposedly he shows up to, monitor detention every once in a while. But he'll go down to the Pop Warner games in the Rainier Valley, in the CD, go after some of the athletes there in the off-season, watching, those kids' games on Saturdays, and pull them out and pull them over. And that's really, in some ways, it's good for the kid because the high school that they're going to go to by getting recruited is a much better school. At the same time, I think that you got to ask yourself, is that actually an ethical thing to do? Recruiting a kid out of middle school, I mean, we're talking when you and I were going to bar mitzvah parties, how much do you know? How much do you know about your life? You're going to put all this pressure on a kid and say, all right, football is everything. From here on out, all you got to do is play football. And, for those same kids that are at risk, that's not necessarily a good message. If you manage to correlate the education part, okay, then it's great. How many kids who are high school stars who go on to play college play in the NFL? Not many.
That's right. And then they get kind of stuck because they didn't learn anything in high school, right? You have that too. You have people helping them out with their tests, those type of things. Does that type of thing occur?
Yeah, it doesn't occur not much around here, to my knowledge. If you were to go to Texas or the Deep South, you might find that. Certainly when you get up to the next level in college, that happens a whole lot more often. But I don't know how much that actually occurs in high school. I think at high school there's still a little more individual effort by the kids. But you really kind of just want to make sure that the kids still get to be kids, and I think that's where you draw the line. Do you want to win? Do you want to compete? Absolutely. At the same time, you're trying to mold a man out of these kids. Certainly looking back, I was not the same kid as a senior as I was when I was a freshman.
Right. No doubt about that. We're speaking with Big Benjamin Bloch, talking about high school football. Big Ben, let's switch gears and talk about the NFL now. Big crazy week. Your Seahawks had a nice win. Tell us a bit about that.
My thoughts? I didn't like the way the linemen performed on either side of the ball. I didn't like the way the defensive line was getting pushed back. I didn't like the way the offensive line wasn't getting a good push forward on their running game. But at the same time, you know what? It's the first game. It's 10 a.m. on the East Coast, which is never, ever an easy thing for West Coast teams. So I don't know how reflective that is of how they play. But that was a concern that I had watching some of their preseason ball, too. At the beginning of last season, the Seahawks defensive line was really a big strength. The offensive line they're still tinkering with. They're still moving around some guards, and it definitely hurts continuity. But at the same time, looking towards next week, that's going to be a battle for them. But at the skill position, the Seahawks are every bit as talented, if not more talented, than the 49ers. So that's good going forward, especially playing at the Clink.
Are you worried that Russell Wilson is going to have a sophomore slump after his great rookie campaign?
No.
All right, tell us why that is. Why do you think so? Why do you think that we won't have a problem?
Russell Wilson is beyond years. This is not a Cam Newton. This is not a Vince Young. This is not a. Let me think of another good example. There are so many guys that come in. Andy Dalton, there we go. There's another one. Andy Dalton and Christian Ponder. He's not like them. Russell Wilson is mature beyond his years. He is a class act guy. He does yoga. I mean, this is a totally different kind of person. This is a guy that, if you saw him on the street, you know, would you know that the guy is a football player? Would you know that he's an athlete? He's just a totally different person than your typical pro athlete, whether they're a quarterback, whether, you know, anything. So, no, I don't think that. I think he is too smart, too mature, and too centered.
Do you think this team last year lost in the postseason against the Falcons? Had they won, they would have gotten the NFC title game. That was a game they should have won, right?
100%. If they hadn't slept through the first half of that game, they would have gone on to win the Super Bowl.
So with that being said, is this team that they have right now, with more seasoning for Russell Wilson, a Super Bowl team?
In theory, yes. In theory, you know, this is a team that will go, I don't know, 12-4, 13-3, maybe 14-2, but that's never the equation for a Super Bowl title. The Seahawks had it right last season. They got hot, real hot at the end of the season, like the previous seasons, Packers, the Giants, wild card teams that got hot. And I think that if I'm going to take my fans cap off for a second and put my analyst hat on, it's a tough one to do. That window kind of closed. You know, when was the last time that truly dominant team during the regular season won? You know, right now you look at Seattle, San Francisco, Denver, Green Bay. Now, Green Bay doesn't have the defense, and they're whiny.
So,
but,
talk a little bit about the...
And you say, you know, okay, you're going to have a really awesome regular season. But, you know, somewhere, one of those 10-6 teams is probably going to creep up real hot on you, you know. It's a question of peaking too soon. I think there's a question of overconfidence. A first-round bye can be as much of a curse as it can be a gift. On one hand, you get healthy. On the other hand, you get out of the flow, you know, especially when you start benching guys, all your starters at the end of the season. So there's a lot to be said for just how good you are going in, how good you are mid-season, and then ask yourself, well, are you that good at the end of the season, or are you like, you know, I'm good, so we're just going to, we're going to go ahead and win the Super Bowl now.
Now, I wanted you to talk about the Cardinals. My Cardinals, they lose to the Rams by a field goal at the end. That was frustrating. They had an 11-point lead at the end of the third quarter. Larry Fitzgerald had 2 touchdowns. Carson Palmer looked pretty good. Why did they drop that game to the Rams, Big Ben?
Too many small errors, turnovers, penalties. In that first week where you have so many games that were last-minute wins, I think there were maybe less than a handful that were decided by a touchdown or more. Your small mistakes, your week one, your dumb penalties probably lost that game. You know, Levi Brown, offensive tackle for the Cardinals, somehow that ball has landed in his hands a few times over the last few seasons, and you got to stop and ask yourself, well, why does the ball keep landing in Levi Brown's hands? And you might find your answer. So it's not against Levi Brown, but this is a question of where's your head, where's the game?
Well, I understand. Why is it a problem if the ball lands in Levi Brown's hands?
Because in order for the ball to land in his hands, somebody else has to fumble the ball. There has to be a deflected pass.
Ah, gotcha.
There has to be something has to have gone wrong. It's not as if Carson Palmer can throw the ball to Levi Brown.
Right, that's against the rules.
Yes, that would be against the rules.
All right, let's go over to the AFC. I want to talk about first the Colts beating the Raiders barely, 21-17. I had them in my suicide pick. A lot of people did as well, Suicide League, because that seemed like a slam dunk game. Why was that game so close? How come the Raiders only lost by 4 points?
Probably because the Raiders are not as bad as people give them credit for. They have a stout defense. They have a running back in Darren McFadden who can play. At the same time, they're the Raiders. They're also prone to making just a whole lot of dumb penalties. But, you know, they're playing against a young team in the Colts. Andrew Luck is a second-year player. This is not a veteran team, you know. You got young guys playing against young guys. You got Terrell Pryor, the famous, perhaps not the brightest, but a good football player. And you got guys who can play. You got Darren McFadden. You got a mean defensive line. So you add up those things together, and, you know, that can add up for a real close game, especially at the beginning of the season. You know, nothing's polished. No team's offense right now is polished.
All right, let's talk about Peyton Manning's 7 touchdowns. Speaking of polish, he's pretty polished there. That's the most I was told in the last 40 years. How did he do that one? He's Peyton Manning. He's never thrown 7 touchdowns his entire career until Sunday.
There are days when everything goes right. They added a lot of talent around him. They geared everything around him. And sometimes when you let a guy like that just do his thing, that's what he does. You know, Baltimore State will play a mile high at the beginning of the season. He lost Ray Lewis, and they're always talking about how old Ray Lewis was and, you know, not being as fast or as strong as he was. He was a field general. You know, if you could give a guy an assist like you do in basketball, not an assisted tackle, but as if you were to pass a defensive player to the ball carrier to make a hit, you know, Ray Lewis would be like a Jason Kidd.
Right.
And I think losing that was real big.
All right. Now, what are we looking forward to in week 2? What's something we should keep out for a surprise, an upset, something people aren't expecting? Obviously, you have Jets-Patriots Thursday night. That's a big game. Most people think the Patriots will probably win that easily, although you saw last week the Jets get the win, the field goal right at the end. Talk about that game, Patriots-Jets Thursday night.
So thank you, but, you know, it's not unheard of. The New England Patriots this year are not the New England Patriots of the last decade. This is a team missing a whole lot of components. It's a team that doesn't have a particularly strong defense. Were it not for Danny Amendola and a surprise performance by Shane Vereen, you know, E.J. Manuel and the Bills had that game, no problem. So, you know, there's some strong potential for upset there.
All right, and you think we're ever going to see Mark Sanchez in a Jets uniform again?
Oh, I'm sure at some point Rex Ryan will put him back in.
Really?
He has held on to him for this long, and he is Rex Ryan. It would not surprise me. Against perhaps the better judgment of anybody who knows anything about football, but it would not surprise me in the least.
But, okay, but with the way Geno Smith in his first game in the NFL, he threw about 25 completions plus, had over 250 yards, got the win, did it in comeback fashion. I mean, he looks like he's for real. Game one. Well, there you go. All right, Big Ben, we got to run. Thanks for coming on the program. Of course, our expert in the NFL, football in general, Big Benjamin Bloch. Thanks for being on Lewis Live on Israel Sports Radio.
All right, Powerhouse. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Be well out there. Shana Tova.
Okay.
All right, Big Benjamin Bloch breaking it down, football action here on Lewis Live and Israel Sports Radio. Here's what we're going to do right now. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and on the other side is going to be our filmmaker, boxing expert extraordinaire, Brin-Jonathan Butler, to break down the Floyd Mayweather-Canelo fight, and that's going to take place this Saturday night. It'll be after Yom Kippur, so don't worry about that. You can catch the fight. It's the biggest fight of the year by far. Potential upsets, not upsets, but a potential upset with Alvarez. Sal Alvarez's name, they call him Canelo. We'll get into all that kind of stuff of the actual odds of him beating Floyd Mayweather for the first time ever. Mayweather, of course, is undefeated, and many people say he is or will go down as the greatest fighter ever, pound for pound. Of course, I don't know if that's really true. We're going to get into all that kind of stuff in just a few moments. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Also, a reminder, if you're listening to us on Justin.tv, then come over to IsraelSportsRadio.com and check out the store by clicking on the store tab. Great items such as T-shirts, hats, books, and much, much more. Great stuff coming up. So stay tuned on the other side. Brin-Jonathan Butler after this.
In the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Check out the Israel Sports Radio store by clicking on the store tab on IsraelSportsRadio.com. Great items such as T-shirts, hats, books, and much, much more. Price does include shipping, and we do ship throughout the entire world. All major credit cards are accepted to make your shopping experience easy and convenient. So once again, click on the store tab on www.IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Broadcasting live from Israel.
IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Folks, as you may or may not know, Israel Sports Radio is not supported by government funding or personal donations or solicitations. Rather, it is supported by people just like you by purchasing gifts at the Israel Sports Radio store. Your purchase of a T-shirt, a hat, or book helps us continue our great, fabulous programming, such as bringing the Maccabi Baseball 2013 or the Israel Football League in the last few years. We hope to continue broadcasting for you fine folks out there throughout the entire world who listen to the station. And the way we are able to do so is through purchases through our Israel Sports Radio store. So once again, click on the store tab on www.IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Broadcasting live from Jerusalem, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Check out the Israel Sports Radio store by clicking on the store tab on IsraelSportsRadio.com. Great items such as T-shirts, hats, books, and much, much more. Price does include shipping, and we do ship throughout the entire world. All major credit cards are accepted to make your shopping experience easy and convenient. So once again, click on the store tab on www.IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Building love of Israel, one sports fan at a time. IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Folks, as you may or may not know, Israel Sports Radio is not supported by government funding or personal donations or solicitations. Rather, it is supported by people just like you by purchasing gifts at the Israel Sports Radio store. Your purchase of a T-shirt, a hat, or book helps us continue our great, fabulous programming, such as bringing the Maccabi Baseball 2013 or the Israel Football League in the last few years. We hope to continue broadcasting for you fine folks out there throughout the entire world who listen to the station. And the way we are able to do so is through purchases through our Israel Sports Radio store. So once again, click on the store tab on www.israelsportsradio.com.
You're tuned in to the only all-sports talk network in the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com. You're tuned in to the only all-sports talk network in the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Check out the Israel Sports Radio store by clicking on the store tab on IsraelSportsRadio.com. Great items such as t-shirts, hats, books, and much, much more. Price does include shipping, and we do ship throughout the entire world. All major credit cards are accepted to make your shopping experience easy and convenient. So once again, click on the store tab on www.israelsportsradio.com.
Broadcasting live from Israel,
IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Folks, as you may or may not know, Israel Sports Radio is not supported by government funding or personal donations or solicitations. Rather, it is supported by people just like you by purchasing gifts at the Israel Sports Radio store. Your purchase of a t-shirt, a hat, or book helps us continue our great, fabulous programming, such as bringing the Maccabi Baseball 2013 or the Israel Football League in the last few years. We hope to continue broadcasting for you fine folks out there throughout the entire world who listen to the station. And the way we are able to do so is through purchases through our Israel Sports Radio store. So once again, click on the store tab on www.israelsportsradio.com.
broadcasting live from Jerusalem, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Check out the Israel Sports Radio store by clicking on the store tab on IsraelSportsRadio.com. Great items such as t-shirts, hats, books, and much, much more. Price does include shipping, and we do ship throughout the entire world. All major credit cards are accepted to make your shopping experience easy and convenient. So once again, click on the store tab on www.israelsportsradio.com.
Building love of Israel, one sports fan at a time. IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Folks, as you may or may not know, Israel Sports Radio is not supported by government funding or personal donations or solicitations. Rather, it is supported by people just like you by purchasing gifts at the Israel Sports Radio store. Your purchase of a t-shirt, a hat, or book helps us continue our great, fabulous programming, such as bringing the Maccabi Baseball 2013 or the Israel Football League in the last few years. We hope to continue broadcasting for you fine folks out there throughout the entire world who listen to the station. And the way we are able to do so is through purchases through our Israel Sports Radio store. So once again, click on the store tab on www.israelsportsradio.com.
You're tuned in to the only all-sports talk network in the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
All right, on the line right now, the director of Split Decision and, of course, our boxing expert to talk about the big fight Saturday night between Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Saul Alvarez. Please give a warm, loose-like welcome to Brin-Jonathan Butler. Brin, how you doing out there?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
All right, so this is a huge fight, and there will be a lot of people there, a lot of famous people there ringside. Someone who will not be there is Oscar De La Hoya, who checked himself into rehab. Tell us about that. He kept posting on his Twitter feed that he'd been a certain amount of days clean. He's had a relapse and back in rehab. I mean, how did this happen? I thought everything was going good.
Well, and it's right on the heels of Mike Tyson declaring that he'd relapsed after 4 years of being clean. So
it's a bad weekend.
Pardon me?
There's something in the air. It's a bad weekend, I guess.
Well, I think it's the age-old thing with these guys. I mean, just trying to acclimate to life after boxing, even when you're, in De La Hoya's position. I mean, one of the very exceptionally few who came out unscathed financially, and still, I mean, there are demons there. I mean, reports are vague right now, but it sounds like alcohol and cocaine.
Whoa.
Had really dogged him for a long time. So I would guess indications point to one or both of those substances being responsible for voluntarily committing himself.
All right, now, I've talked about this in the past with you that I find it fascinating. I mean, boxing, you got to be in tip-top shape. You know this. You were a boxer, obviously, and I don't know how he was able – because he did this in his career. He was an alcoholic during his career, correct?
Yeah, that's what he's claimed. He claimed he lost 3 years worth of his prime as a result of his drinking. So yeah, he was definitely drinking either in between fights or maybe in the lead-up to fights, which is crazy.
Right. I mean, I don't know. You would think that would drain him a tad. And we've talked about also how does his management, his trainers, let him get away with this, but it's kind of you cannot mess with the golden goose. He's the one that pays you. He's the one that makes the money. You're going to have to let him do what he wants to do, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look at the case of Mike Tyson. Brilliantly managed, completely innovative strategies with recording all of his fights on videotape and sending out the highlight reels to reporters. I mean, just the most brilliant marketing job of an athlete, I think, ever in terms of, I mean, he's on the cover of Sports Illustrated by 19. How does Tyson repay them? Fires them all. Fires every single person who was around him, that original squad, who, by the way, was putting out fires left and right in terms of his personal misconduct. So I think your point is dead on, that once these guys recognize that nobody else is in control, that they have the final call with every decision, it goes to their head and they exercise generally some really bad decisions.
It's kind of like you give somebody a gun, a loaded gun, expect them not to use it. That doesn't really work that way. So you've seen this with athletes. In regards to Oscar, I find this fascinating because even though he's made hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars and owns a company and is very popular, his childhood was somewhat difficult. He grew up in East L.A. He had a lot of different difficulties with his father. And I'm going to get really Freudian-like with you, Brent. I got to do this here. We know that he's had a issue with cross-dressing. I mean, is this related because, he didn't have a relationship with his father, so he doesn't feel like a man, and he dresses like a woman, and he has to drink to deal with it? Is any of that stuff at all possible? I'm going real Freud to do this.
Well, I mean, what do we know about him? We know that he's breaking down in tears, winning the gold medal for his mother, who recently died, and at the same time, he never received approval from his father until he lost against Tito Trinidad, where his dad, for the first time in his career, and we're talking about a guy with one of the most menacing amateur credentials ever in the sport, his dad said, that was a good fight. And he'd never heard his father give him even that much praise up till that point. So clearly this guy is, the public persona with his behavior. I mean, how many illegitimate kids are there apart from the ones he's acknowledged? I mean, there's a lot to this guy. That just because he was so popular and likable, I don't like to go right back to Tyson, but if you make a contrast between Mike Tyson's conduct and somebody like Muhammad Ali, it's interesting how Muhammad Ali is this institution of goodness. I mean, he's a secular saint in the United States.
Right.
And yet his conduct in many areas is deplorable, is cowardly, letting his best friend Malcolm X die, cheating on every woman he was with,
yeah,
et cetera, et cetera. So.
Oh, the thing with Ali, how people have brushed that to aside. I mean, he gets the Presidential Medal of Freedom a few years ago from George W. Bush, but the worst thing he did, as you mentioned, he cheated on every woman he's ever been with. He's had 4 wives. His second wife married him when he was flat broke. This was in his exile when he wasn't allowed to box. He gets back to the top, and he trades her in for a younger model. I use that term model because he married his third wife, Veronica Porsche, like the sports car. Third wife was a younger, pretty woman. He just traded her in, dropped her. He said also terrible things about white people and black people that date should be killed, and a bunch of things that people just choose to ignore. And as you mentioned, they do consider him a secular saint.
Well, I think it just comes down to likability, and people prefer not to think about those things. I think you and I have mentioned before.
You're right.
Where you get somebody who's hit a woman, for example, in the public sphere, they can never lose that taint to their reputation. Whereas John Lennon was an admitted woman hitter. He talked with Rolling Stone saying he, beat several women he was with. You never hear it mentioned. Why? Because people just like him.
Right.
They just don't want to think about it. So I think that boxing, there's even more sort of flypaper on these guys' reputations. And yet every now and again a De La Hoya crops up and he's the golden boy and everything's great. But behind the scenes, it seems like nothing was great. The family life, his own situation with women, illegitimate kids, whatever's going on with the cross-dressing. And I think, moreover, a few years after Floyd has left boxing, it's going to be very interesting to see what becomes of him.
Well, maybe that's why he hangs on. I mean, originally, 2007, the fight against De La Hoya, he said that was going to be his last fight. Here we are 6 years later, and he's fighting another big fight. And he might – a lot of boxers, as you know, they stay on, hang on, because they're scared of what's on the other side. Maybe they're smart to do that because maybe there's a lot of darkness on the other side.
Oh, I mean, imagine these guys are starting at 6, 7 years old. Probably for just to get away from horrible home lives in most cases. And then by the end of it, I'm working on an article right now about Manny Pacquiao's fight coming up, and many people close to him expect that he's pretty close to being bled dry already, that he can never stop fighting, that financially, he just has so many expenses associated with his lifestyle that, he just can't stop. And realistically, he's one big loss away from just being a name opponent, just a stepping stone for some other fighter on the way up. And as much as anybody, I think he picked up the mantle from Tyson in terms of being the most exciting and yet also the most beloved fighter of this generation. Maybe not the best if you want to give Floyd that title, which I would. But it's astounding to me that, somebody like Pacquiao must have had, a dozen mega fights, and he's still in the midst of, financial ruin?
Incredible.
Incredible.
This guy's made $30 million a fight before, correct? He's got to that level or higher?
We're talking Pacquiao now or Mayweather?
Pacquiao.
I think he was up around 20. I think he was between 15 and 20.
But he did that about double, like a dozen times, 10 to 12 times he made $20 million.
I would say more like half a dozen times he made big money. Certainly that last run he had with De La Hoya, Hatton, Cotto, Claudia, he probably made good money for. Margarito, he made good money for. Tim Bradley, probably 10 to 15 million there. So that's quite a run. And then all the Marquez fights. There was that other trilogy he had with Morales, Barrera. This is four other guys' career highlights in one person.
Right.
It's staggering, and yet, every time you have a belt, every time you see these guys carrying a belt to the ring, there's 2 to 3% of whatever they're earning that's going to the people who own that belt. It's like a tax. So imagine when guys are walking in there with 3 or 4 belts. Right there, you've got almost 10% of your gross earnings just going as a kickback to the people who are fighting. To the people who own those belts.
Wait. Let's say a tax. Hold on. If somebody wins a championship, they have to pay the WBC a tax to own the belt?
Not only that, not only does the guy who owns the belt have to pay a tax, but the guy who's fighting for the belt also has to pay a tax.
Wow. I've never heard. Wow. I did not know that. That's incredible.
You don't hear it. So, again, we've done it before, but let's say Pacquiao makes $10 million. So if he's got 3 belts on his shoulder, there goes, 8%? 6 to 8% of his earnings, poof. 10 to 15% to Roach. 5% to a strength and conditioning coach, all the expenses associated with the training camp, a massive entourage of 60, 70, 80 people going to each fight that he's flying over, putting up in hotels.
Bob Arum.
Covering their expenses.
Bob Arum's going to take his cut.
Absolutely, and his manager is going to take 33 1/3%, which he's entitled to in the sport. I mean, a third of his earnings. So I mean, it's not that surprising if a guy hears I'm making $10 million and lives that way in terms of his lifestyle, but in reality he's making what, $2 million, $3 million? It can go fast when you're living that big, and of course the sport, with only a few exceptions, they all go bust.
And by the way, I have his pay-per-view buys here. Now, let's see, one was close to $1 million. Basically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bouts over 1 million buys. 1 million buys is usually 20 million, approximately, correct?
Yeah, sure.
And as you mentioned, Mosley, Marquez, Margarito, Hatton, Cotto, De La Hoya, obviously. So, wow, that is something else. So he's in trouble. Also, you talk about him being likable. He was running an office, a politician, and I mean he had other things to the side that he definitely looked like he had it all.
Well, and again, let's look at that congressional run, not just for him but also his wife, and an upcoming presidential run. The estimates I've heard is that he dropped $6 million on that congressional run. And I don't know how much he paid for Jinky to do the same thing. I mean, perhaps it's less. But nonetheless, this is massive, massive money. And the guy's earning power outside of boxing is reduced to nothing. Where does he make his money? He does endorsements here or there, but already you see with an iconic knockout loss like he suffered against Marquez, I mean, his brand is irrevocably damaged. And I think that's what Floyd potentially walks into with Canelo, is because, I mean, this is an interesting thing about Floyd and Pacquiao, is they kind of embody the two careers that Mike Tyson had. Because you have Pacquiao, who was beloved and cheered as a wrecking ball, with all these big names that he wiped out, just as Tyson was at the beginning, pre-prison. And then after Tyson emerged, he was even more popular, sort of turning heel, doing everything to provoke an audience into just what's going to happen, or we'll have some champion to step up to this bully and knock him out, which is Floyd. That's the way Floyd has marketed himself after the Pretty Boy Floyd thing never really went over. I mean, he was more than happy to stink out fights. So, I don't know, it's interesting, and I think you're going to see with Floyd, if he loses, especially if he loses bad, just some massive knockout on the level, anywhere close to what happened to Pacquiao, he has sure put a lot of stock in that being, I'm undefeated, and all the other greats are not undefeated, other than Marciano, but nobody's saying that Marciano was a better fighter than Floyd. I think he's going to really, I wonder what it's going to do to his ego. If it happens, and I don't think it will, that he gets really taken down, because the biggest cheer that Floyd Mayweather has ever heard in his entire career was when Mosley almost knocked him out.
Right. That's right.
I think he is somebody who wants to be loved, and he's not loved. He's marketed himself. He's completely leveraged his marketability on pay to watch me lose. And psychologically, if he does lose, I'm really interested to see what his second career looks like.
You make a lot of great points. Of course, we'll speak with Brin-Jonathan Butler, director of Split Decision here on Lewis Live and Israel Sports Radio, about him being a nice guy, pretty boy, turning heel. It wasn't too long ago he was fighting in 5,000-seat arenas in Idaho, and I'm not really exaggerating too much. He really turned heel, in my opinion. In 2005, he's fighting Arturo Gatti, and he was not the headliner of that fight. It was Gatti Mayweather, and he ripped on him in a sensational trash talk, very scientific, about how Gatti was nothing more than a punchy bag. He was going to embarrass him. He became the bad guy. He won that fight in dominant fashion. He's been the bad guy since and has made money off of it. Let's talk about the chances of him losing this Saturday night. 36 years old. He's going to fight a 23-year-old at Sal Alvarez. What will be the keys for the fight for Alvarez to pull this victory off?
Well, when I look at this fight, I really I don't think it's there for Alvarez to win so much as Floyd to lose. And so I believe the tools that Alvarez has to win is I think he has faster hands than Cotto did. However, I think he's a lot slower with his feet. He's not much in terms of lateral movement to give him some different angles to hit Floyd. But he is young, he is tenacious, he's strong. But as I say, I think this fight is there for Floyd to lose for exactly what you pointed out. He's 36 years old, and if the version of Floyd that stepped in against Cotto shows up against a very game Alvarez, there's real potential there for something to happen. He was there to be hit. He was hit more than I've ever seen him against Cotto. Now, if the version of Mayweather that fought in his last fight against Guerrero shows up, I can't see Alvarez having much of a chance at all, strictly because his footwork is so, I want to say one-dimensional. He's just a very stationary target, and he's not very mobile or quick. And Floyd should be able to just work his way around him and not really expose himself to any danger and be totally content, as he always is, to stink out a fight.
Now, one of the things also curious about is his focus, his attention, because he has other things going on. He's got the Mayweather Promotions thing. He likes to be involved with music stuff. I mean, is this where it catches up to him? Is this finally where we see this fighters that focus on things outside of boxing at some point they lose, like De La Hoya with when he fought Bernard Hopkins, was knocked out in 2004. He's a little more serious after that, but when he runs a company, you saw it cut off to him. Is this, at some point, is that going to catch up to all this outside stuff?
I think if it was going to, it would have happened already. I mean, he's just kind of broken all the rules that most people accept are there to bind fighters in terms of just what you're talking about. You know, remaining focused, dedicated, not getting distracted by all these other things outside of the sport and training and all that. He's never shown up to a fight out of shape. He's never shown up to a fight without a game plan and without a plan B and a plan C and a plan D for whoever he's fighting, and he's getting better and better and smarter and smarter. He's 36 years old. That's the one thing he can't escape. It catches up to every single fighter. And, you know, he's got, I believe, 4 more fights after this in order to complete his contract. So is Canelo the one who's going to, you know, find that suddenly, you know what, I mean, 36 years old. This guy could hurt his knee in round 1.
Right.
And be, you know, have his mobility limited. He could break his hand, which he's done numerous times. Any number of things can happen to him in there with another 30 minutes to go, with Canelo being able to take advantage. That I think is what makes it so interesting, is that Canelo is so young. He's a dangerous puncher, and from all indications of his career, he's a brave, game fighter who feels that his destiny is to make his name by not just beating, but I think destroying Mayweather. And boy, if anything can kind of save the sport in terms of you know, non-boxing enthusiast fan base, I think, you know, just some kind of iconic win here by Canelo. I just think he's somebody that people, it's very easy to get behind him. It's very easy to admire what he stands for. And yeah, it'll be fascinating to see. I mean, Jesus, Floyd is guaranteed $41.5 million for this fight.
Wow.
Biggest payday ever, highest paid athlete in the world. And he deserves it. I mean, he's marketed himself brilliantly. But as I say, I just, why these things are so dramatic for me is just what happened to Pacquiao. That's there any moment, and it will not just put out Floyd's lights that fight. It could destroy his career. And I mean, in bullfighting, no bullfighter is ever taken seriously until they've come back from a serious injury.
That's true.
I think there's something about that with boxing too. You know, Ali is Ali because of what he was able to do after Frazier and what he was able to do after being kicked out of the sport. I mean, Ali was like Floyd pre being thrown out of boxing, and suddenly we saw this chin, this desire, this willpower, again and again. You know, everything he demonstrated. maybe that's there for Floyd too, or maybe he's going to win the next 4 fights and go out of his career with a better undefeated record than Marciano. I mean, it's an interesting time in this very narrow focused way with him. But I mean, other than him, who else in the sport really has any kind of name recognition? Like hardly anybody.
Now, one of the things that was interesting in regards to the press this week, Floyd admitted that many of his opponents were handpicked, and he actually said it's a good thing. He commended his team. Those were his quotes. He said, "I had a cool career. I didn't take any punishment." He said if they say these guys were handpicked, they was handpicked to make 40 and 50 and 60 million, then you know what? Keep handpicking them. If they're going to keep paying, keep handpicking them. So what are your thoughts about Floyd? Because a lot of boxers, when there are handpicked fights, they don't admit it. They say, no, they're good fighters. But Floyd's actually coming out and admitting that. What are your thoughts about that? And, of course, the effect on his legacy.
Well, I think again, the effect on his legacy will be very telling if he loses, because I think you and I have mentioned it before that it's interesting in this country. The main morality is really, do you have wealth? If you have wealth, whatever sins you did to acquire it, nobody really cares.
Right.
You can buy your way out of it.
That's right.
So I mean, nobody in America would name anything after Donald Trump. So what does he do? He names everything after himself. And I think you have the same situation with Floyd. As long as he can keep winning, he can keep shelling out money to sort of make things happen. He got some good press by helping somebody who I think it was Gennaro Hernandez, who died of cancer. He paid for the funeral services. I mean, he's not a completely heartless person. I think a lot of this is just the persona he's created, but he's made a lot of enemies, and this is not the easiest way, I think, on yourself psychologically when you're not in professional mode to leverage an entire career that really sort of offends everybody on some
right.
level. Like we know we're in on it with wrestling, but with what Floyd has done, sort of mocking everybody, disparaging every opponent, and then afterwards saying, it was all part of the show. I mean, Ali got away with that. Ali got away with saying that Frazier was an Uncle Tom and looked like an ape and all that, again, because of his likability. Floyd is not likable. Floyd has never gone over based on his own personality as a likable celebrity or personage in the sport. He's disliked. He's very disliked, and people dislike what he stands for. So if he can keep winning, I don't know. I guess then his legacy is secure because he's undefeated, and as far as he's concerned, that's the only thing that's important. But if he loses, then everybody else gets to weigh in. He can't hide behind that zero anymore, and things get very interesting in terms of, what would Floyd Mayweather have been in any other era of boxing? He would have been another pretty good fighter. He would not have been anywhere close to as important as he is right now.
Yeah. I think one of the things was, go back to Tyson, made those comparisons. When Tyson lost to Holyfield the second time, the bite fight, that's when you went, I think he's washed up now. When's the last time he beat someone of significance? It's been 6-7 years. I guess we were fooled. And if Floyd does lose, especially a big knockout, you're going to go, wait a second, when's the last time he beat someone of significance? How many fighters has he really beaten? And you're going to go through, you go, were we fooled? And there's obviously a lot on the line. I mean, not just money, but what we think of the fighters. We're going to leave you this last question. Brin, give us your final prediction. Big fight, Floyd Mayweather Jr. versus Sal Alvarez this Saturday night.
Well, I say 7-1. Floyd walks over him with a pretty boring, tactical, unanimous decision. But then, if for some reason he's old, all that time and the wear and tear catches up to him, I could see Canelo pulling something off. Some people are telling me they think that Canelo, the real opportunity will open up towards the end of the fight. I think it's early in the fight while Floyd is trying to get used to what Canelo has to offer. So I'm going to go out on a limb and predict a knockout within 3 rounds by Canelo.
Wow. All right.
Well,
Something else. Canelo in 3. And Floyd, I think part of the reason he took this fight was because he thought Sal Alvarez might get him in 2 or 3 years, and he's young now, and he'll fight him now, but that could be a mistake. We have you on record, a prediction in 3 rounds, and you certainly know your stuff. You had the prediction right, of course, of Pacquiao getting knocked out in the 6th round. and that was back when you-know-who was really focused, correct?
No, this is true. Remarkably focused.
Very focused.
Well, and you know who else looks focused is one Floyd Mayweather Jr. I haven't seen too many 36-year-olds walking around who look in considerably better shape than they did at 21.
Yeah. Well, again, he's also been very focused. Now, had he just come out of jail, we could have said it was the jail thing, but that was like a whole year ago, so I don't know if we can say that anymore. All right, Brin, great stuff, my man. The director split decision here on Lewis Live on Israel Sports Radio. Enjoy the fight Saturday night. We'll be talking on Facebook before the fight, after the fight, probably during the fight. We'll see what happens. Enjoy, and we will be in touch.
Thanks so much, Artie. Talk to you soon.
All right, be well.